Thank you all for coming. I'm Roger Marheim, the President of the Faculty Association. This is our monthly Faculty Association membership meeting, and it's welcome basically to all students, faculty, and staff. Occasionally we do have administrators join us, but not quite so many in recent days. The campus has been, to me, people have asked me, what do you think? I say, I am exhilarated. I have never seen anything quite like this. And I think you should all give yourselves a hand because you've all been part of a tremendous project that will continue. Please give yourselves a hand. We have a fairly full agenda, and as our meetings are always with 1 hour, we try to be very efficient. And so I want to make a few announcements, and then we'll get right to it. First, in the room, we have a number of people who were responsible for the vote of no confidence. And we've had a lot of baiting, that somehow this was a group that was a toady for the FA and so forth, and they made very clear that they were part of an independent effort. And we want to thank them for all of their efforts and their presentation last week at the board meeting. Thank you very much. A second announcement, and I don't think this is out of order. The Academic Senate the last 2 years, I'll be very honest, has been bullied by the administration at this college. And it's unprecedented that a year ago, Edward Martinez, who was a good friend, stepped down after 2 years and broke extraordinary precedent in which usually presidents were in the Senate office for 4 years. This year, my colleague and friend Dustin Hamby is also stepping down after 1 year. A.C. Pinella, one of our bright young faculty, is stepping down from the vice president's position. And I think that this is an indication that the toxic environment of the college, the very unpleasant aspect of leadership on the campus gets bullied, that people try to give an independent voice. They're stifled, and they are looking at something that really all of us have to join together. So I'm just going to, because I know some people in this life are running for Academic Senate leadership, why don't you just stand, I guess, so people get a sense of who you are. Whoever's in the room who's running, I think you should just stand. Also in announcement, it's really item 7, the FA elections. We will have our elections coming up in a few weeks. On the back of the agenda, it gives you the outline. Treasurer position, vice president position, and 2 director positions are up. And so watch for more paperwork on that, ballots and so forth, and when, if you have an interest in running for office. So that's item 7. I just want to get that out of the way. It's basically a note of information. I want to also introduce Alex Collegian. I'm not sure where Alex is at. He's sitting there. Why don't you stand, Alex? We're not going to ask him to speak. Alex is running for the Board of Trustees in Area 1, which is Jeff Baum's district. And so it's a tremendous precedent here. And we will look forward to further discussions with Alex along those lines. The FA has not endorsed, but we are certainly intrigued by the board elections, and we do indeed have an elections committee that is pursuing the fall board elections. I also want to say something about the PCC Courier. I think there's some Courier people in the room. Just wave your hand if you're a Courier person. I personally am going to frame this, hang it in my office. This, of course, last time I thought no confidence. I thought that was a pretty powerful headline. This one, I think, as an addition, it actually supersedes that. So really an amazing job. Thank you very much. And I think it's appropriate, though, that the Courier is doing its job. It's representing the objective point of view of what is actually happening on campus. Thank you very much. We're going to go now, I think, to item number 2, which is recognition of our staff unions, and we invite them informally. They They want to say something about their particular issues, their negotiations, and related topics. So is there anyone from either CSEA or ISSU CFT who would like to say a few words, or would you like to just stand and we can applaud you for your efforts? All right.
Yeah, sure.
Now we'll see from ISSU CFT.
I am the Vice President of ISSU CFT, however, this is not an official meeting for us. It will be something we sponsored. So I will be here to answer any questions on a personal level, but Julio as well is out. We have no notice that this is a meeting that we're supposed to invite our members to, so that's all there is today.
Thank you. I was also asked to refer to a few unfortunate items. As we know, bullying has been widespread on campus, and quite frankly, staff are much more vulnerable to bullying than faculty as a general rule. Untenured faculty and part-time faculty face reprisals, as we know. But I've been asked to tell you the classified Senate, which is an ongoing, robust body in this campus, meets regularly, requested to meet with Dr. Rocha or someone along those lines, perhaps even Bob Miller, for many months, and they were refused. And now, in the very last week or so, apparently, either Bob Miller or Mark wants to meet. And I wish the classified Senate well, but clearly the staff face all sorts of threats. There are people who are their jobs are being moved. Obviously, a year ago, Anna Mae Jones was actually removed from her office. She was actually the president of the ISSU at the time. And so we just want to reinforce the FA's support for all staff, the classified Senate, the CSEA, and the ISSU CFT. Thank you very much, everybody. One of the most important events, along with others, so many in the last few weeks, is the associate students, for the first time in college history, to my knowledge, I'm in my 34th year, the first time I've ever seen anything like it, the associate students took an incredibly courageous stand, a stand of integrity, and one that they took a lot of heat for. I know for a fact, and it might not be actually stated by some of them, they were bullied behind the scenes. I know this for a fact. And it's unconscionable that the president of the college would attempt to bully the associate students. And yet they voted a vote of no confidence and censure, which effectively calls for the dismissal of Dr. Rocha. So Simon Fraser is here.
Been a little bit of a difficult time, so I appreciate that. I'll be brief, but if anyone does say 30 seconds before I finish, I may stumble. So please do. You know, I want to clarify a couple of things, because there were some things that were said at board level after my ability to respond to them had passed. And I want to be clear about a couple of things. Position at this college very seriously. We spent a few months in negotiation with the upper echelons of administration in an attempt to work on the issues of transfer, because we were informed very clearly that there were significant issues. 48 students alone were affected at Humboldt State University, for example, and the AS was able to make that happen. I have never said that the administration has not done anything. I have said that what they've done is too little and too late, because when you start to make arrangements for a calendar change in February, when it should have been done in October, that is not acceptable. And so I want to make clear that we have tried to communicate, we have tried to have these discussions. The administration was given ample time, in my view, to respond. So the idea that this came out of the blue as drive-by consultation, I think the phrase was, is absolutely untrue. Finally, I will say that our communications with the Chancellor's Office have been well and productive, and we are in a good position. We are still considering our other avenues with the Chancellor's Office, and I like to think that our credibility is assured there, because everything that we have said is true and documented. And I want to make that very clear, because that was one of the accusations that was leveled against us at the Board of Trustees. after I've been able to respond. And finally, there are two final things I want to mention. An inference, and I would appreciate faculty and staff support for the student activity fee. The student activity fee funds not just the clubs. I think there's an impression on this campus that it just funds clubs. The student activity fee also funded Smart Thinking 24-hour tutoring. It funded DSPS online assessment. It has funded Lancer Lens, which is a new project on campus. And I'm working very hard for it to get to fund elements of the Safe Zone program. I've had a bit of pushback on that, but I'm trying to get that through. And so the student activity fee is something that is essential, and yet every year it seems to come under threat of review. This, to my position, is a student fee, and the shared governance laws clearly give the associated students purview for student fees levied on campus. However, we've all seen where AB 75 falls on this campus. So I would appreciate the support of your students and yourselves in maintaining this program for the entirety of the campus. And I will say that when I was just up in DC. I met with the Secretary for Education in the Department of Education, and we had a very long conversation about all sorts of issues. And it made me realize that there is a lot more that this college and I think the administration needs to be focusing on. And none of those things have been talked about down here. We haven't talked about financial aid for students. We haven't talked about getting the right kind of scheduling for everyone. We haven't talked about numbering systems. We haven't talked about these things that students really need. And I hope that at some point, there are certain elements of this campus will realize that that's the conversation we need to be having, and not the one we're having now, where we're having to fight and fight and fight to get our views across, and yet we continually get pushed back. So I just want to say thank you very much to the faculty and staff for all this.
Thank you so much. Another brief announcement, item 4. We are an independent union, as you know. We're not part of either CTA, which we broke away from 6 years ago, or part of CFT. We're an independent, and the independents meet twice a year, generally once down here, LA or San Diego, and once up in the Bay Area or Sacramento. And we have meetings, biannual meetings for April 25th, 27th. Normally that would be about the middle of our semester, and this time it's literally the weekend before finals. But if you have an interest in going, the FA can sponsor an individual to go. Certainly someone who might be interested in who's running for Senate, someone who is on the Vote of No Confidence group, as well as our FA members. It's a very tough weekend, given it's the weekend before finals week. But just keep in mind, let us know in the union office, 7261, or call me, 7421, if you have an interest. Okay, we want to go to 3 major pieces of information. One is calendar committee, grievance, and then negotiations. So each of them has much substance to share. And I don't know if Matt Hennis is here. Saw him earlier, but Matt Hennis, along with so many others, gave a very, very profound statement to the Board of Trustees last Wednesday night. That statement is copied for you, and it is in the green sheet. And Krista Walter, who co-chairs the calendar committee, is going to speak to some of the calendar issues. It's a muddled discussion and very difficult to follow, but I think the calendar committee, the people on the committee, particularly the staff and faculty and students, have done a remarkable job. So, Krista, do you want to say a few words?
I think you have some other people from the calendar committee here. Maybe you members could raise your hands to see. Well, as you all know, this is a very contentious committee, and always has been. And we recently revisited our charge, which is quoted in the green sheet, which says that our committee is to support the pedagogical and operational needs of students, faculty, and staff within the framework of the negotiated agreements between the collective bargaining units and the district. And our interpretation of that statement is that we determine the calendar. It goes through a very elaborate shared governance process. Many committees also have to approve it. It's fully vetted for a full year, and then it's signed off by the FA, and then it goes to the Board of Trustees. We've never received a calendar from the board and told to firm up the dates. So we've been struggling with this in our committee. And recently, my co-chair, Dr. Bell, chose to cancel one of our committee meetings. By the way, we're a year behind. in our planning. And when I asked him why, he said that he was frustrated because we had so much public comment and dissent within the committee and so much discussion over the merits of winter that he felt that there was no point in having a meeting. He didn't consult with me, he just canceled the meeting. So we held the meeting anyway. And the committee determined to have an additional meeting. Now, Dr. Bell is in a difficult position. We understand that. But this committee has decided amongst ourselves to uphold the shared governance process and to take our charge very seriously. And we have presented to the Board of Trustees, we recommended that the 13-14 calendar include winter. And that's where we stand. Thank you. Does anybody else want to say anything about that?
Obviously, the calendar committee has done extraordinary work, and again, when the very top-level leadership obviously send the word down that these committees shall either not function, or a vice president is most certainly told to cancel a meeting, and so forth. I mean, again, it's just another example of shared governance being broken from the top, that we are attempting to do our job, and we're being prevented from doing that. So thank you very much, Calendar Committee, because I was on the Calendar Committee many years, and it was usually the most boring committee, and we more or less would decide some pretty inconsequential things. And now, I think the Calendar Committee, like BRAC, the Budget Committee, like the Senate, have become extraordinarily relevant, and all of us must find our place in that process and commit to it, and sustain that commitment. It's a very important thing, so thank you very much for this.
With all the classified Senate on how they wanted the calendar to be for winter coming back. 75% of the classified Senate, classified employees, excuse me, want winter back because they remember that without students, we all would not have jobs.
Wow. Thank you. Denise Albright.
At the Academic Senate meeting on Monday, a lot of questions were asked, and I watched the video. Unfortunately, before I went to sleep the other night, I didn't have insomnia. I was just wondering, I recall President Roger responding concerning the calendar issue, that he came to the Academic Senate meeting because that's the body of college governance for the faculty on campus, and was told by Ed Martinez that that we can't discuss that here, that it's a union issue. And that is his response to why we are where we are. Because it was a union issue, it needed to be negotiated, and it was negotiated. He said that. So, possible?
The Faculty Association, at least in the last 7-8 years, has absolutely committed itself to following whatever shared governance produces out of that process. It might be a Senate issue, it might be a calendar issue, it might be a CNI issue. So for example, one of our issues, and Danny and Julie are going to speak to this in a second, is the issue of class size. CNI deliberated very, very resolutely all last year to come up with lower class sizes, generally speaking, pedagogically driven, discipline appropriate. And so we said that's a new work condition. But out of this group and our friends elsewhere, a new work condition developed, that is class size. Therefore, then it becomes a negotiable item. That is, we negotiate class size, we will negotiate winter, but only after it comes from the shared governance, generally speaking, year-long deliberations. So I'm going to call him out. Mark Rocha, again, misrepresented the process, misstated the truth, and in fact, the FA always supports the shared governance process. Otherwise, we wouldn't be a meaningful union. I mean, unions should be unity across the campus. So thank you for that question. I want to go right to grievance. Rod Foster is going to speak to grievance, and we have a lot of grievances, more than usual, as you might expect, but they have very specific focus. So here's Rod Foster, along with Suzanne, our two main grievance officers.
Thank you. Last Monday, a faculty member who's been on our faculty full-time for 31 years told me a story about Gail Cooper having hauled her into her office to question the dropping of a student who halfway through the semester had 6 absences and wasn't keeping up with the class. And she proceeded to question this faculty member for 2 hours about the dropping of this student. Now, we know that Gail doesn't really have a very thorough job description, doesn't really have much to do around here, but she does not have the power or the authority to call any of you into her office and to question you, especially about an academic matter. And that was an issue that must have been, it should have been settled at the dean's level at the very highest. And so please, we put a notice out to everybody yesterday. You have an absolute right to have a member of the faculty association with you whenever you're hailed into a meeting where your performance or your decision making could possibly be brought into question. And you have a right to refuse to meet with Gail Cooper unless she demonstrates the authority to call you into a meeting. So listen, this is a person who's really toxic, who doesn't really know how community colleges function, and which is kind of one of the themes I want to kind of develop just in talking about grievances today. For the last 2 months, we've been going through a process called mediation, where impartial third party has met with us in the district to discuss our various positions on the contract. And one of the themes that kept coming up over and over again is that the administration, the district, is not following the contract. And our only recourse when they don't follow the contract is to grieve it, because there are specific provisions in the contract that protect us, that lay out the terms of our employment, and the district is choosing not to observe those, not to honor them. Now, this is my 28th year here at Pasadena City College. I came here as Bob Miller's replacement a long time ago, and I don't think I'll replace him again. For 25 years, we had administrations that respected the contract, that attempted to live up to it. And yes, every once in a while we had a disagreement, and we did have a grievance, and sometimes we even had an arbitration. This administration is choosing to try to weaken the union and weaken your security and your tenure here at the college by breaking the terms of the contract. And so we've had more grievances in the last few months than we've ever had in a years-long period at PCC. And so please realize that you have rights and that you can't let these people push you around. Now, one observation, just by way of finding an explanation for this, we have 2 assistant superintendents serving this president who never interviewed for their job. We have no idea what their qualifications are. They were both kind of pushed into the job, I think one more willingly than the other. So one of the things, and then we have a bunch of new deans, people who got their jobs by probably being very cooperative with Dr. Rocha, and positions were created for them, who have very little experience. So we don't really have a significant body of experience in this administration. You know, it's kind of been a revolving door. We had to have all these vice presidents, and then at some point or another, a bunch of them were escorted off campus by Gail Cooper and the police force, and for dubious reasons, I might add. And so we have chaos in administration here. We're going to go to a 5 super dean organizational structure in the fall. We don't even have job descriptions for the 5 super deans yet. They don't know what kind of support they're going to get. These people are making it up as they go. Hugo Schweitzer is quoted in the paper as describing the organizational structure of this college today. I will not repeat what he said, but it's spot on.
One of the issues with grievance as well is class size increases. They were increased across the board 20% this semester from fall, and every single increase is its own grievance. And so we are recommending, particularly in your own division, your own discipline, to join us. And some English teachers in the room, we haven't done that, but we do need to do that. I want to move right to the negotiations. So Danny and Julie are going to speak to that. They have a lot to say, and so I think we give them enough time. So Danny Hammond and Julie Kiotis, lead negotiators. They have been under it for months and months.
Just go through very quickly. You have an outline. It's the yellow pages. I'm going to follow this. I'm not going to read every word of it, but I'm going to try to emphasize some of the different parts. But one of the things that's a little confusing is the whole PERB situation. And so I wanted to clarify that just quickly. We filed an unfair labor practice regarding the calendar because the district did not negotiate that calendar with us. Okay? So that's an unfair labor practice. There was a hearing that Roger and I attended about a week ago on the 12th, and at that hearing they did not dismiss the charge. They actually set a hearing date for July 8th through 10th. So we have a hearing on this unfair labor practice in which they instituted a calendar without negotiating with the union, which we believe, again, is an unfair labor practice. The other thing with PERB is called an impasse. And we filed an impasse regarding the calendar before the Prop 30 vote. And then, as you know, there was a deadline the night before Prop 30 that we had to, take their deal or leave it. And since then, they've refused to sit down at the table with us. And since then, they filed an impasse on all the other issues. Okay? So those things were merged together. And we had a hearing, I believe, with the mediator that Rod referred to. I think in December we had a meeting, and then again in January. Our third meeting was March 13th, as you can see from the outline there. And at that meeting, we were not able to come to agreement with the district, and so he certified us to fact-finding, which is the next step in the process. Then the district, at that time, we provided our last counteroffer, and we'll talk about that a little bit. And then the district on Monday emailed us at 1:05 p.m. They emailed us what they called their last, best, and final offer, 2 hours before the Academic Senate meeting. And then Dr. Rocha comes and talks about it at the Academic Senate. They didn't send it to us in order to negotiate with us. It was for show. Because if it had been sent to us to negotiate with us, he wouldn't have done that without us having an opportunity to even look at it, and then he presents it to the Academic Senate. And then he had his press conference about it yesterday, apparently. I missed that. The PCC, I just want to quickly go over PCC's budgetary situation. It's the best it's been in a decade. We're going to get another $6.7 million, assuming we get all the FTES, which they could have easily gotten if they'd had a winter intersession. But they are going to get another $6.7 million. The revenues are about 110 or 111 for this year, so that puts us at about 117 million. At our peak, we were at 121 million. So we're not far from the peak of the revenues that we received here at PCC. They're in the middle of replacing the administrative information system, which is going to cost approximately $14 million. I have a reference in there if you want to go look it up. That's from their own minutes in their board meeting, and they don't intend to touch any of the $20.7 million in reserves in order to do that over the next 5 years. You can see Dr. Rocha, his contract, you can find it online, is going to get a raise. He got a raise last July of $5,000. It's $7,500 this next July, $10,000 the next July, $12,500 the next July. Currently, when he first was hired, he got 6 months of pay and benefits if he were let go as a severance pay without cause. Now it's up to 18 months, which would cost the college approximately $380,000. Okay, so that aside, let me get to, so I just want you to get the picture of what's happening here at PCC budget-wise. So why can't we come to an agreement with the district? A lot of people say, what's wrong with the faculty association? Why can't they just come to some kind of agreement. I want to explain to you exactly why we can't. I've come up with 5 major reasons, really 4 I want to emphasize. Their last best final offer is pedagogically unsound. And I'm going to go into the specifics of this on 2 major issues in the contract to do with NCNs in the calendar. It diminishes the quality of the education we provide to students. It totally undermines all faculty and the shared governance process here at PCC. To my knowledge, as Roger mentioned, the FA has never opposed any shared governance decision or action. We've never opposed any shared governance decision or action on this campus. It would completely undermine our colleagues in the Academic Senate. We were just told at the last Academic Senate meeting that the NCNs that were approved in 2012, the new NCNs, are going to be brought to the Academic Senate, and we are going to approve those NCNs within the next month, in the next 2 meetings. It would completely undermine PCC's efforts to improve the retention and success rates. Julie is going to do a demonstration in a minute, not a demonstration, she's going to show you some information, some data about our success and retention with the winter intersession in the calendar. And finally, the pay raise turns out to be a pay cut if you factor in a 20% workload increase, which is what they're asking for in their last, best, and final offer. So first, let me get to, I'm going to really spend a lot of time on 2 issues in the contract that make it just really impossible for us to make an agreement with the district. And they have stood firm on these issues the whole, since last April. They've never budged on these issues. Number 1 is this average class size increase of 20%. Okay, so let me just, over the 82, 83 NCNs. Those are the old NCNs. Okay, so it's a complete, a direct disregard for the year-long shared governance process, which, by the way, that was all fostered from the previous negotiation with Dr. Rocha and his administration that insisted that he wanted to change the LGI system, but we had to change the NCNs in order to do that. And we said, let's wait till the next set of negotiations, and in the meantime, let's go through the shared governance process and fix the NCNs. Oh, no. We want to change how you're getting paid LGI, but over the next year, you can go through the shared governance process and fix all the NCNs. Okay, so that was an agreement. We agreed in the last agreement that the administration, the faculty association, and the academic senate would go through the shared governance process, which we did for the last year, and came up with what we felt were pedagogically appropriate numbers of students in classes. And what they're asking in this contract is, not only are we going to disregard what you just did over the last year, but we're going to go back to the 82, 83 numbers, and then we're going to add 20% to it. Okay? So I have a chart in a minute I'm going to show you that you just can't believe the numbers when you look at it. This process that we went through, the administration was not only present, they participated and approved. I went and looked up the CNI, and I also asked the people that were actually there, but they have seats, and they voted and approved these new NCNs last year. And they even spoke out positively toward them, apparently. I wasn't actually there, but I was told by people that were there. So they were a part of it, they were aware of it, they participated in it, they approved it, and then they actually implemented it. Last semester, as you all know, the new NCNs were actually implemented. For a whole semester, we went with the new NCNs. And suddenly when they realized they had this FTES problem, they said, well, Dr. Rocha said he didn't even know that the NCNs had been administered. And the other story we were told, Mr. Miller said in the BRAC meeting that they never actually agreed and signed off on those NCNs, and that's why they were going to disregard them. Okay? So, now the other thing you have to understand is the average, okay? This is an increase, a 20% average increase. So that means in all the classes where there's labs or a limitation where you can't increase anymore, that means then you have to increase by 25 or 30 or 35% in those other classrooms in order to come up with a 20% average increase. The 82, 83 numbers are much larger than the 80, the 20, well not much larger, but there are many instances where they're the same, but there are many instances where they're much the NCN. So let me just show you quickly a chart, and then Julie is going to talk about those kinds of numbers. This is a chart, let me get it on full screen. I went through a chart of the NCNs, the old NCNs and the new NCNs. And so you can see the old NCNs and then the new NCN. And if you do a 20% increase over 82, 83, so for instance, let me just take the first one. I know it's probably a little more than I need to put out here, but for Business 2, they went from, just as an example, from 44 to 40. Now, under their 20% increase, that means you would have to put 53 students in the classroom because you're going 20% over 44, the old NCN. That is 32% over the new NCN. That means you would have 9 more students over the old NCN and 13 more students over the new NCN. And now remember, the new NCN is what we spent a year on saying what is pedagogically best for our students with the most recent research that we have. And you look at the number, just the number, and the percentage over 2012 NCNs, which we believe is pedagogically best for our students, and look at the number of students is in the double digits all the way down, other than a few exceptions. And the percentage over that NCN is astronomical, okay? So again, you can, I just wanted to give you a sense of what that's going to mean in your classrooms if they implement that. So how in the world could we agree to this? Okay, and then Julie's got a little presentation about these numbers as well.
Sorry, I'm at the end. It's very brief, I won't take too much of your time. But what I did was I took 12 semesters or 6 years worth of data of psychology courses, and I compiled a success and retention level for all full-time faculty of face-to-face classes to see what happens as success and retention, as class size increase or decrease, what happens to success and retention. And there is a statistically significant inverse correlation between class size and both retention and success. Now, wait till you see what happens when we do what they're wanting to do. So, this is what happens as class size increases. What happens to our student retention? So, these are the numbers that we just got approved. I think we can all live with an 88%. This is the number that most of us in social sciences typically live with. This is the number that the administration is currently suggesting to us. So what happens is retention decreases, but wait till you see what happens to success. Success crashes. This is the new number that we agreed to. You should know that Dr. Miller was in the room and approved all the numbers. He was at every CNI meeting. And I personally challenged him at the meeting and said, do you agree? Does the administration agree? And he said, yes, the administration agrees to these numbers. So this is what social sciences typically lives with. This is what we're asking our students to do. We're asking our students to sign up in droves, and we are expecting almost half of them to fail if we agree with these numbers. We are literally putting students, I believe, in positions just to pay for classes that we know that they will never, ever pass. If I were the students, I would be furious. As faculty, I don't believe that we can possibly put our names on this and agree to this. It is untenable. What you see here is the total number of students you put in a class. This is the retention and this is the success. So by putting that many more students in a classroom, you gain nothing but lose what percentage of self-esteem, what percentage of their ability to continue to stick to something. You all know, and I know as a psychologist, The more we set you up to fail, the less likely you are to continue to try. So their self-efficacy will decrease, and our entire mission as a community college gets lost in these numbers. And it is completely unacceptable. So this is our major sticking point. I sat on C&I. I personally spent about a month of my life compiling this data, because those of you who have tried to get data from our campus understand what the data looks like, and then you have to go in literally by hand, right, and a calculator. But these are regressions that I would stake my reputation on. I've done the data analysis. It is not, you can come to my office. I will share every piece of data that I have with you. So thank you for your time. I appreciate it.
This is extremely dangerous for faculty evaluations, because when Hoffman was here, he was on a tear to get faculty evaluations to include success and retention rates. So really, remember those horrible days of that particular regime, and we're coming back to that.
And the more students they pile in our classes, absolutely our students are.
You don't want that.
Right.
Set up for failure anymore for each other professionally and for our students.
Okay, and then the second major issue that just would not allow us to agree to this is, of course, the insistence on this trimester, or whatever you want to call this new semester, that eliminates the winter intersession. Again, it's a complete disregard for the shared governance process that we went through last year, went through Academic Senate, went to College Council. It was even recommended by this administration to the Board of Trustees. The Board of Trustees approved it in May, and then suddenly in August, without any input from any shared governance group, the administration comes up with a new calendar and gets the Board of Trustees to pass it within 2 weeks. And it would also be a complete disregard for the current calendar committee, who again on March 12th, as was just mentioned, voted to have a calendar that includes the winter intersession. It's also in opposition, and this is on your second page of the beige ones, the front of it. I was going to put it up here, but I don't want to take the time. The success and retention data that we found, including periods in which we had the winter intersession, and there's definitely an improvement in success and retention since the winter intersession has been there. You can look at the data there. And then the next page on there, again, I was going to show it up here, but you've got it in front of you on the beige one. We're out of sync with Mount SAC, Glendale, Santa Monica, Citrus, and Los Angeles City colleges, which all kept their winter intersessions and waited until after Prop 30 was passed, where they had plenty of money to offer classes. And so we end, our spring ends way before their springs are. We're all off kilter with them. That hurts part-time faculty. It hurts our ability to get the best part-time faculty, and it hurts students who are trying to take classes also at other colleges. It's actually partially hurt our FTES, because students are saying, hey, I can get a winter intersession and a spring at these other colleges, so I'll go there instead. So these are other reasons why we just could not agree to what they're asking us for in this contract. Just quickly on the COLA, I've never seen or heard of a contract that takes COLA. COLA is your cost of living adjustment, okay? That is to protect you from inflation. It's always been a pass-through by every institution. The state funds it, it comes to the institution, they pass it on to the employees. That's the whole point, okay? And what they asked for in this last best final offer is they want 50% of that. They want 50% for the college to put in the general fund. So if there's a 1% COLA, you only get a 50% COLA, and the college takes the other 50% COLA for their general fund. I've never heard of such a thing. Okay, and they, by the way, they get that COLA. There might be a few exceptions, but for every category in the budget. So I'm trying to go into, but in essence, if there were a 1% COLA right now, we would only get 50% of it, so we would get a 0.5% pay cut, because that's just to keep you up with inflation. So we wouldn't even be keeping up with inflation, and this would happen every time COLA is funded. Now, I realize in the past few years it hasn't been, but things are clearly turning around. And agreeing to this and setting this precedent going into the future, I mean, basically, from the time I've been here, we've had very little increase in our pay other than the COLA. There's a couple times where we got maybe 1/4% or 0.5% more than the COLA, but this is really how we get our raises, and they're saying they're going to take 50% of that. The other three issues, just real quickly, overload, contributions to benefits, and really little movement towards parity for part-timers. On the overload issue, the chart is in your thing there. It's slightly off because it's off by 1% because of something. But anyway, you get the idea. It's basically a pay cut of between 10 and 21% on your overload pay. And then there's the benefits cut, which means what they're asking is $50 a month, $600 a year from faculty to pay for benefits. And then finally, with part-timers, there's really little movement towards parity. There's no seniority rights, there's no additional office hours, there's no movement toward benefits. Yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
And on Santa Rosa does a yearly, very comprehensive salary comparison across the state. And according to the College of Santa Rosa, PCC adjuncts at step 1 are number 63 out of the 71 colleges across the state in adjunct parity salary. Did you catch that? 63 out of 71. What that means is that a community college professor could go to any other school in the state and do better than they could do here. Why would they come here and teach? If we want to bring the best and the brightest to teach at PCC, we need to offer better than we're offering right now.
Full-time faculty, they do it separately, and we range from, depending on what step, 17, which is the best, I think, at the early years, to 53rd or 57th or something like that.
It's on our website right now.
It's on the website. The last thing I just want to note is that if you take the increases that they're offering in those less best and final offer, and then you subtract, if you have one overload class, plus what you're going to have to pay for benefits, it's about a 0.8% increase. If you have 2 overload classes, it's a pay cut in the first year. Okay? In the second year, it's maybe a 2% or 3% increase but you have to factor in the pay cuts for overload and for benefits. So keep that in mind when you're looking at their last best final offer. All right? Any questions about any of that? Good.
I have one last final. People hear me? Anyway, one last final announcement. Board of Trustees election group, which I understand is faculty, staff, and students, will meet March 28th at noon in R409. So March 28th, coming up in a couple of weeks at noon in R409. Okay, and I think there will be something out about that. Thank you all for coming. We will see you soon. Keep up.